Hey, welcome to Coffee Talk. Have you ever gotten a song stuck in your head? Maybe it was that old ditty, this is the song that never ends. Yes, it goes on and on, my friend. Oh, you remember that one? Or maybe it's a fun song from the radio and you don't even know half the lyrics, so you're humming most of it or making up random nonsense words just to keep up with the music. You know, getting something stuck in your head is not really a big deal, but what is a big deal is the soundtrack that gets stuck in your heart. I know we've already talked about our life soundtrack, and if you missed that video, we're talking about the voices you listen to, the people you surround yourself with, the things you read or scroll through, because all of those things culminate into a soundtrack that informs and directs your life. Believe it or not, just like a good movie, our lives have a soundtrack. And what we're listening to is going to have a powerful impact on what happens in our future and where we wind up. Today, I want to talk a little bit more deeply through this with you because, yes, it sounds good to say, well, I need to have a more positive soundtrack. I need a soundtrack, if you're trying to start a business, I need people in my life that teach me about how to run a business, or if I'm trying to do clean eating, if we're trying to update the way that I cook, I need those kind of people in my ears. But sometimes we need to look at our current soundtrack and test it. We need to know how to test our life soundtrack. Something I was thinking about the other day, every person in your life, you are giving them the key into your future. And the more time you spend with that person, the more you're going to become like them. The more you're going to be influenced by their ideas and their opinions. And so you control the key to your soundtrack. You control how much influence certain people have in your life simply by how much time you spend in their presence. And so it becomes very important that you assess, well, what does it do to me when I'm around them? Here's a good question. Do you leave their company feeling inspired and energized? I know there are certain people that absolutely inspire me. They energize me. I am excited for the next step. There are certain podcasters, Mel Robbins, Dr. Jordan Peterson, The Minimal Mom. I really glean a lot from their podcast. Even though I don't know them personally, they have become part of my life soundtrack. My husband is another one. He is great at encouraging me when I am trying to do the hard things. He is an encourager and he inspires me, and I enjoy spending time with him. I will bounce ideas off him and he'll have another take or a different perspective, and it grows my abilities to push forward. There were professors in my life who inspired and energized me. Dr. Sean Watson, Dr. Michael Kearns. I still keep in touch with them because they have helped to build who I am. Every time I'm around these people, they inspire me, they encourage me. I feel like I'm in a safe space to where I can charge forward and do what I feel God has called me to do. You need people like that in your life, but you need to assess every influence. For instance, do you leave their company feeling inspired and energized, or do you feel sudden, sweeping relief whenever you leave their presence? It happens. Here's the test. After a visit, do you feel inspired or do you feel encouraged? Do you feel supported or do you feel criticized? Do you feel ready to take on the world, or are you all of a sudden very unsure of yourself? You can test it even before a visit with a person. Watch your body. If you are about to meet up with a certain person and you can't wait to get there, you are rushing to get there early, that is a good indicator that that person is inspiring you. They are a positive portion of your soundtrack. But if you are trying to do everything you can and put off this visit, and before you meet this person, your throat's getting tight and you're getting really constricted in your body and really tense, and you're going, oh, it's only 2 hours. I can handle a 2-hour lunch. I can do this. Guys, they're not a positive part of your soundtrack. A lot of times we don't pay attention to our soundtrack because we ignore our bodies and we ignore the responses that our body has towards certain people or certain places or certain communities. As Carl Jung once said, he said, the conscious mind can put on a mask. Have you ever done that before? You put on a mask? Oh, I have, right? The conscious mind can put on a mask, but your body cannot help but respond to your true emotions. That's why people who are very adept at reading body language, they watch for micro reactions. Those are the little body reactions that happen right before that person's able to consciously put the mask back in place. Let me tell you, we have slippery masks, and wearing a mask is not always bad. There are situations where a mask is necessary. For instance, when you are at work, and let's say it's a pressure cooker situation, and you cannot afford to let on that this is stressful because you're the one who's having to make those decisions. You have to put on that mask of your inner emotions. You can't go in there, oh, I'm so scared. Well, your clients are going to lose faith in you. So you have to put on a mask in that situation, and that's understandable. Or maybe you have a child who's very sick, and you've got to put on a mask. No, honey, everything's going to be fine. And yet your own emotions are going crazy inside, and you're mourning inside. Or maybe you're praying with a person who is in dire straits, and you're just as worried about them as they are. But you've got to have that mask going, no, it's going to be fine, until you both feel like it, right? Sometimes we are very emotional on the inside, and we put on a mask to save the other person from our emotions. And that's all well and good. Sometimes it's necessary, but the danger is when our mask fools us. When our own mask fools us and it begins to deceive us about our own relationships and where we stand with other people. We should not only read the actions and words of others, but we need to be in tune with how our body is responding to those in our lives. It will tell you a lot about the level of influence they have over you. It will tell you a lot about whether their influence is positive or negative. It will tell you whether they are a benefit to you as you step into your future, or whether they are a detriment who is holding you back. We have to be aware of our own mask and assess how we really feel around the people and the voices in our lives. So my question for you today is, what is your current soundtrack doing for you or against you? Your soundtrack is the people in your ear, it's the places you go, it's the ideas you listen to. So again, do you feel inspired after an encounter, or do you feel discouraged and aimless? Even when you're doing what you're doing with your life sets the stage for tomorrow. Excellent example. I work for a company, and at different points in time, I've worked with different departments, and there was a time I worked with a certain department, and they hired me on to completely revamp that department's documentation. It was a massive project. Nobody had been applying for the job. No one wanted to touch that issue. And I needed challenge. I needed a change in my life. And I thought, you know what? If anybody can do that, I know I can. It's going to be hard, but I can do it. And so I jumped into it with both feet, and of course was hired on with that department. And when I first began the project, it was overwhelming. I was working a lot of overtime, but I was energized. I was like, I am making a huge difference. I am going to help these clients. I am helping this whole team. I am making a huge difference. And I was energized. And I would show up to the meetings and I would showcase the changes. And hey, we tested this. We updated this. This now works in the software. Look at this. And subtly, over the course of several months, things started to change for me. And what started to change was the people in those meetings had a real problem with any kind of change. And every time I would showcase what I had worked on that I was so energized about, they would, well, I don't like that. Why would you break apart a paragraph there? Well, maybe we don't like the way you tested it and changed up those activities. I don't know that I like that. And every single meeting, there was not a thank you. There was not a, oh, wow, that's going to help us so much. And so I really began to question my work. And I even bounced it off to some other technical writers in another department and said, hey, would you check my work? How did I do? Would you give me feedback? What am I missing? And they would come back and say, no, this is excellent. My goodness, you spent so many hours. Wow. And they had to encourage me because the team I was on was picking it to pieces. And it got to the point to where before I would go into those meetings, all of a sudden I was not excited anymore about what I was doing. I dreaded everything. And it made it harder and harder and harder to do the job that needed to be done, because I knew no matter how hard I worked, no matter how well I did, it was going to be torn down. And it ate away at me until I finally decided, you know what? This isn't for me anymore. I'm going to find another team that needs me. I've got to move on, because it was destroying that momentum. Let's look at the flip side of the coin though. About a year ago, many of you know that I homeschool my children, and I am a huge advocate for homeschooling. Now, if you don't homeschool, that's fine. I'm not going to criticize you, but I am a huge advocate for homeschooling. And I received a phone call one day from a friend, and she said, I have a friend that you don't know, but she has 3 kids, and the schools have gotten so bad where they are, she needs help. Now, this lady is all the way in another state. She's about 4 states away. I can't get there in person, but this friend, she said, look, my friend needs desperate help. And I knew, you know, the ins and outs of the laws with the different states. You know about testing, you know about transcripts, how to get these kids into college, and what these kids need with the different curriculum that's out there. Because I used to build curriculum for a small college. I was a curriculum developer. I'm a curriculum developer now just for a tech company. Anyway, so I called this lady, and it took probably 3 hours. We went through everything. One of her children had an IEP, which is an individualized education plan. We went through the IEP, what her daughter needed, what extra help she was going to need. And we began to go through the curriculum, the choices she had to make sure her daughter didn't fall behind, but could be homeschooled. We looked at her other children and what their passions were. And hey, you know what? This might lead to a career eventually. Let's do this particular curriculum because it's very strong in history or it's very strong in science. And I worked with her for 3 hours on the phone, and then back and forth via email. We're working back and forth, and then more time on the phone. And this day was so full. I had no time for anything else. There were other calls that came in that I would have to get on and say, hey, I'm so sorry. I'm in the middle of something. I'll get back to you. It absolutely consumed my whole day and consumed several days after that. But that evening, my husband came home from work, and he said, what's for dinner? And I'm in the kitchen and I'm cooking, and he goes, what's for dinner? And so I tell him, and he goes, what happened today? You were absolutely singing through the house. I had so much energy. I was so excited. I was so pumped because I had done something I was passionate about something I loved, something that meant something to me, and it made all the difference. I had so much energy after that encounter. Your soundtrack includes what you're doing with your life. One side absolutely fills me with dread. It filled me with dread. And so that was a very good indicator I was not doing what I needed to be doing. I needed to be somewhere else. The other side, working with this mother and consulting her with homeschool, filled me with joy. It inspired me. It excited me. And I have worked with 9 different families, getting them set up to homeschool with their record keeping and their curriculum and the things their children need and transcripts. I've worked with 9 different families. I do it free of charge because I love it. That ministers to my spirit. It ministers to my soul. And so when I assessed my year last year, I looked at it and I thought, okay, the things that are filling me with dread, I need to back up from. Those need to diminish if I'm going to succeed. But the things that I am passionate about, that fill me with excitement and energy, and I'm ready to push forward, I need more of that in my life. That's the direction I need to move further in. It's the same with the people in your life. This is why being part of a church community is so important. A good church community will inspire you to worship. It will inspire you to be a better version of yourself as you strive to live for God. A good church community is a safe place, and it gives you that ability to move forward. A good pastor will encourage you to draw closer to God. A good pastor will be that inspiring voice. It's very important that we surround ourselves more and more with the right soundtrack and diminish the voices that are detracting and tearing away. Today, I would just challenge you. I don't want you to just think, yeah, I need a positive soundtrack. Yeah, I need to listen to fun songs. No. I am challenging you to start assessing what you have going on right now. Assess the voices. Assess the news feeds that you listen to. Assess what you're scrolling through on your phone. Assess the podcasts you're listening to. Assess the communities you're part of. Assess the friends. And make some changes. I'm not saying completely write people off, but you can limit the time that a negative voice has in your ear. And you can counteract. If you're going to have to be around somebody who's negative, great. Limit the time and schedule somebody who builds your spirit right afterward, because that's going to help you get right back up where you need to be. So there's my challenge today. That's our coffee talk. Start testing your soundtrack. Test it by your body, by your emotions, by how you feel, and what you're capable of accomplishing when you are around those influences. I hope you have a great day. See you next time.